With episode 10 of Summertime Rendering, we got two very important answers that we've all been seeking. Yes, some insights into the Hishigata family, and additionally, why Ushio has to always wear a swimsuit. It's a very important thing that they had to explain so that we would never question. It's like the whole thing behind Mio and having to show her underwear like every single episode when the show first started. There has to be an answer why that's important, but yeah, episode 10 was honestly a huge information dump, kind of disguised in some eerie abandoned building exploration. But yeah, a lot of insights into a lot of setup for what's to come, and I do really like that stuff. So don't get me wrong, some people might see this as being a waste episode, but I ate it up. I made a lot of notes, so without further ado, let's jump right into episode 10. Before we dive into what Shinpei and team end up doing, let's handle this little situation with Mio really quickly, because it was a very brief scene and everything else is kind of one fluid story. We get a brief shot of Mio and Tokiko together, and it looks like there's kind of a little bit of an uneasiness between the two of them. And yes, I still have my suspicions around Tokiko, and we had quite a few shots of her being very uneasy about the current situation. It's obvious that she does seem to know something that she's not revealing. Going back to the whole festival scene where Shinpei confronts Tokiko and she immediately says, "I dirty my hand for no reason." And again, here we have, it looks like she's uneasy about the state that Mio is in. Now again, the only thing that we really get a perspective of Mio at this current time is that obviously she just lost her sister, she just got to the funeral, and yes, she's very uncertain about Shinpei's current status because he's just disappearing. So my assumption here is that she's obviously seeing that there's something weighing on Mio that she is at fault for. Again, this is going back to my thought process that she is more tied in with the Hishigata family than even So is. And so she knows possibly what's happening. And she would in fact probably be a little bit, I don't know, like she feels at fault in a way about what happened to Ushio, but she can't reveal it to Mio. But the interesting thing is in this scene is that immediately after this whole conversation where, you know, Mio's talking about not wanting to go to the festival, she doesn't have this yukata, and obviously Tokiko's like, you know, I can let you borrow one. And then she bites her lip. And then immediately, it's like she interrupts the conversation by saying, "Please stay with me tomorrow." Again, this is already revealing that Tokiko knows something's going to happen at the festival. At this point, she already knows something is going to go down, and she wants Mio to stay with her. Obviously implying that she's somehow involved with what's going on in the background, or that she's being involved in something that's supposed to stop this event at the festival, and she wants Mio to stay at her side because she's afraid for Mio and, of course, her friends. But specifically Mio. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this kind of wraps up with this guy showing up, and he's asking questions about the Kobayakawas, and she's like, "Excuse me, who are you?" Like, she stops Mio from saying who she is, and she's like, wait, she got the darting eyes at him, like, "Who are you? Like, what are you doing here?" And yes, this is a guy that was brought in to investigate the Kobayakawas, which is something we kind of seen with the idea of saving Tetsu. He eventually finds out about the Kobayakawas and then reports it to be investigated. So this is a part of the whole timeline that having Tetsu survive, he causes this to happen. So we finally get to see this investigator that shows up. And that's pretty much it for that scene. The rest of the entire episode was really following Shinpei, Ushio, and So. At the very beginning, it kind of implies that Shinpei was the only one that's seen Haine in the flashback with Shiori. At the very end of it, she grabs his arm, says, "I'm not gonna let you go," and they cut off the memory, and he remains to have a mark on his arm. And he establishes very quickly, so nobody else seen it. It was just him. Kind of implying that despite the fact that Ushio was showing this image of this memory, it wasn't necessarily him seeing, it wasn't necessarily that Haine hijacked it. It's that he's seen something tapped into his mind, and he had them cut it off. Also, they imply at this moment that, yes, Shiori was trying to completely erase Ushio's existence, and she obviously got interrupted, so that didn't happen. And now, thankfully, she's restored all of her memories. All for the sake of telling him the truth, which leads them to go to the old clinic. So the rest of the episode is pretty much them gearing up and going to, yeah, like how So gets all super geared out, like he's going to play a baseball game, and everybody kind of teases him about it. He mentioned at some point that Tatsumara, which I think is Tetsu, had kind of, as a test of courage, they went there a long time ago, and for some reason, his father was there, which seemed kind of odd that this abandoned building that they're going to, his father would show up, like almost as if he was coming there for a reason. Like he has been going to this place on a regular basis. Yeah, like I said before, this is kind of the point in which they explain why Ushio has to wear a swimsuit, which I thought was hilarious. It's like the writers going, I'm not doing this just because I'm perverted. There's actually a reason behind I'm having Ushio in a Mizugi all the time. But no, it's because she has to keep transforming. She's re-tapped into these powers, which we got quite a few explanations of different powers that Ushio now has because she now has the memory of her full capabilities. And so, yes, transforming into random objects is one of them, so she turns into a pendant regularly. And they explain the reason why she always turned into a pendant is obviously that it would close down how much space she has for shadow, which makes perfect sense. But in the case of the Mizugi is so that she can transform more freely, and the fact that if she wanted to wear something, she would have to get an image of it. I think Shinpei says specifically that they don't know if there's a capacity. So there isn't, you don't want to keep pushing it because you could get to a point where you might not have any more data to store, essentially. They also later get into the idea that she can technically take images of objects like she did with the necklace and turn into them, which they would then make a copy of it, which then they can then use. But with things that are, this is one of those weird things of like they explain it, but at the same time it's like, but wait, you do it over here. Anything that's like machinery, electronic stuff that has moving parts essentially and circuitry, it seems as if they're just replicas that don't function unless they get rid of the original. So in the case of the nail gun that he's using, she made a copy of it, and then they had to destroy the old one in order for it to actually function. And there's benefits to this because it's like an unending device. Unlimited electricity, gas, nails, everything about it is like unlimited as long as it exists. Yeah, obviously stating that he can't make another copy of that because then he would have to destroy the new original, I guess it would be the case. But yeah, like I said, the funny thing that came from this is like, well, if you're able to make machinery and it doesn't work until you get rid of the original, well then how does copying a human being work? Like, we have all these shadows that are creating other selves of them before they kill the original and they function just fine. A human body has much more moving parts and circuitry within it that would not function unless you got rid of the original. So why is Shadow Mio running around all the time with the original still there? That was kind of one of those things that I don't know if they thought that completely through, unless it's specifically non-living beings. I guess that would probably be the excuse there. Yeah, she can also basically climb through her shadow, kind of like she did in the previous episode. She's able to go into a shadow and move around, but additionally, like completely into the shadow, move through objects, and then remerge her fleshly self out of it. But yeah, the other ability they showed was that she can essentially see through things. So they have this statue and that she uses her flash to flash it, and she's able to kind of see the insides of it. She describes the idea that they have to see the insides of human bodies to take the bone structures and mimic it, so it makes sense that she's able to almost see through, like x-ray this object to see inside of it. But yeah, that was the full information dump around the new abilities that Ushio has acquired. Going to the actual abandoned clinic, there's quite a few things they end up discovering coming in here. First of all, Shinpei notices a lot of records on the floor. He's wondering if somewhere in those records he'll end up finding something to the effect of the shadow illness. But Ushio ends up finding the more important stuff. She ends up finding up on the second floor, there's a lot of stuff like textbooks, there's some albums up there. It obviously some indication that somebody was actually living there before. She questions if the album in there was of the Hishigata family from a long time ago, but we never really got like a full, I guess, confirmation of that. But this is one where things get a little bit weird as Shinpei and So end up finding a statue of a very strange figure. They kind of note that it's something similar to what you would see at shops, like an Ebisu statue, something like a statue of a god of fortune. And what they kind of end up finding out is that this is possibly a statue of Hiroko, which again, Hiroko is the deity that they're doing everything for. Like the festival that we're going to have in the next day that obviously everything went down, that's a festival for Hiroko. This is the god of fishing where they gather all this junk from the beachside and they end up burning it to send it off to this god. Shinpei ends up looking up Hiroko to kind of confirm that this is kind of a description of the statue. He ends up finding this article that says the first god created from Izanagi and Izanami when Japan was created, according to Kojiki. However, he was a weak child and was soon put onto a boat of reeds and cast out to the sea. This section of Kojiki describes Hiroko as a leech-like with no arms or legs, giving birth to the interpretation that Hiroko is heteromorphic. And the other kind of strange thing they end up finding out as they end up calling Ushio down there is that it looks like this thing has kind of a belly bulge. And they were saying that this thing almost looks feminine. So that's when we have Ushio end up using her vision to kind of see inside the belly where they find this key, which this key ends up being exactly what they need to get past this kind of crack in the wall. So it's a door purposely created that only a shadow could open. It just makes no sense that a door like that would ever exist, except for if you have a shadow with you. So again, my theories on Hishigata being extremely involved, it just keeps getting escalated and escalated and escalated. But yeah, they end up going down there. They end up finding, she senses a presence down there. Shinpei specifically says, if things go south, this is how I want to lay out. I will go forward first. That way, if I die, I can just reset. But he says, so I want you to protect Ushio with all of your might, saying specifically that they cannot afford to lose Ushio. Now, this is the part that I don't understand. This is the part that doesn't really make sense to me. It seems to imply that if Ushio were to die first before he dies, she will not return back to the time that he's going to be at, and the next time he'll see her is going to be at the night of the festival. I don't know. This is the part that I completely missed, and I had to watch this like 4 or 5 times. I completely missed what he's doing. What is his logic here? I'm not following it. I'm not gathering his logic here. There's a side of me that believes that he's just purposely making up something just to have an excuse to protect Ushio. Like, he doesn't want to see her die. He does not want to see her harmed. And so he hopes that if I die first, then I don't have to watch Ushio die. That's the only thing I can think of, is that he's implying that his power is just going to reset time and Ushio will not die. Maybe. Obviously, Ushio has implied that she does remember things. She obviously has a memory of things that happen. So maybe he just has the assumption that if she were to die first and then he dies and resets, that she will have lost everything. Like, the only reason that she is retaining her memories is because he is resetting it before she dies. That I can make sense as well. They end up coming across a human-shaped dark burn stain on the ground, which Ushio assumes that is supposed to be something that happened a long time ago based on something having to do with the shadow, which again implies this idea that there was some sort of struggle down there a long time ago. There's some shell casings down there, so obviously there was a fight that occurred. So's obviously very upset because this seems to imply that nothing has really traveled in here in a long time. But the assumption here is this is some sort of traveling that the shadows are using. So again, implying that Hishigata has created this tunnel underneath that these shadows are traveling through. So again, more question mark as to what the hell is Hishigata's, the father at least, or at least the heritage of the Hishigata family, what are they doing here? What have they created? And is everything that's going on with this whole thing their fault? Again, the more I get into this story, the more I'm like, please just tell me, what the hell is the Hishigata family doing? Are they, again, I am assuming they're going to be a third faction, like a non-shadow faction that's fighting against them. It's just, I kind of want that answer, especially with how much is being implied on Tokoko. Finally, they come across a shadow. This shadow seems to be just eating rats, which again, technically would be a way that it would be able to sustain itself. They need to collect data and to consume it, essentially. And they go charging in there. At some point, we have a little bit of inner thought process of Shinpei as he's fighting. It seems like his inner self, separate from himself, is continuously telling him to calm down, relax, and concentrate. He says specifically, do what you've always done ever since the day that your mom and dad died. And doing just that allowed you to always brush everything off as if it was nothing. Again, I don't know if this is going to be somehow connected to the mother and father as some sort of ability that he gained during some encounter, like they were attacked by shadows or something like that, and he gained some sort of actual ability. It seems to always imply that it is just kind of his inner self thinking on things. He always takes a step back, his mind goes away from himself, and he looks at things from behind himself. And we haven't really gathered yet if that's an actual ability or if that's just his mind process. That's just showing us an image of how he thinks on things. But it seems to be odd that this seems to be pointing out that it's happened ever since that happened. And this is sort of a split personality that he has created in order to separate his emotions from himself, I guess. How to handle all these situations going forward after this tragedy happened was by allowing himself to separate himself from his emotions. And then following this fight, we kind of have a little bit of, I guess Ushio is having a little bit of a scare. Her arm's tingling a lot more. She knows that this other shadow that she initially seen is somewhere nearby. She kind of tells him where to go. But then she notices that her arm is still bleeding. The arm that was attacked by Shadow Mio before is, even though she's reconstructed it, it's starting to fade again. And so she has to erase the scarring on it once again. Which kind of implies that despite the fact that she has the ability to kind of fix herself, her shadow is still damaged. Like, even if she can give off this facade and this appearance that she's fine, deep down, she's still scarred, and she may never heal. And I kind of had a mixed feeling with this whole scene. On one end, it's, yes, her being a little afraid of the idea that I'm not healed. I'm still going to die. Like, I'm still bleeding out. Or if it's just kind of one of those inner thought processes of a reminder to herself that she's still, in the end, not human. And that she is still falling apart, that she's still this creature that's damaged. Almost like even despite all this stuff, she's still always going to be damaged. Like, she's always going to have this reminder that, oh yeah, I'm a shadow. It was nice here because as Shinpei is kind of charging on, like, she's like, yeah, that shadow's over there. Shinpei's like, let's do this, and starts marching forward. And So is kind of like, dude, chill. Like, you're just gonna charge right in there. And I like what Ushio says right here. She's like, he's charging forward because he knows what's gonna happen. Like, he's seen what is going to happen tomorrow, and he does not want that to happen again. If you would have seen that, basically, you'd be charging forward too. What the heinous stuff that happens at the festival, he wants to do everything he can to prevent that from happening. And she's like, yeah, if you want to protect Mio, you probably want to charge forward too, right? Yeah, I'm doing it. That leads them into this big cavern. I think they said they smelt like a salt or something like that, so I'm guessing somewhere near the beach. And that's at this point where they just completely get surrounded by shadows, and episode in. another cliffhanger. So yeah, lot in this episode. Really great episode. I think I pretty much covered everything, but yeah, I can't wait to see what this unfolds. And like I said earlier, I kind of really feel at this point I want answers on the Hishigata family. Like, there's a lot of intrigue being built around this family, and I almost feel like we need to get a wrap up of that story here soon. But at the same time, we still have 15 episodes to work with, so I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. But at any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of the episode and all my crazy theories and all the stuff that I got super into. Additionally, if you have not subscribed already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to support us more, we have a Patreon link and a tips link in the description below. We also have a super thanks button down there we can hit and support us directly. We definitely appreciate everybody it does. It definitely means a lot to me. And y'all take care.